So in social emotional learning, we often enter into that work given theme-based learning, so focusing on teaching kids about things like empathy. The purpose of the framework was initially to break down larger skill sets that we value as educators in order to work specifically on granular level of skills. So for example, when we ask kids to collaborate, there's a lot to collaboration.
Really great natural gas. Natural gas because it heats up our homes and everything. Yeah. It keeps us warm. Let's put these
on. Listening, communicating, clearly using specific tone in order to maximize the collaborative effort.
We saw really quickly in the school year that they weren't communicating their differences respectfully. So this has actually been a skill of communication and collaboration that we've been working on for a while. And I wanted to design a priming activity that forced them out of their comfort zone, but in a fun and engaging way. So you and your buddy, here's your rule. You guys are going to create a paper airplane, but each of you has to tuck an arm behind your back. You can decide what arm you want to put behind your back, but you have to pretend that that arm is no longer attached to you and you can't use it anymore. They all came with an idea of how to make a paper airplane, but now they had to redesign that based on the fact that now they needed to align their idea with their partner. And once that idea was aligned, they had to communicate through differences.
The goal of the framework was designed in 3 distinct phases. The first being a priming phase where we lower the affect and focus specifically on actionable skills. For example, when we're focusing on listening, we want to remove some of the academic context initially in order to remove some of the anxiety that that academic context brings.
We might even disagree in how we make this paper airplane. So when you're working with your buddy today, I want you to think about what are the things I'm going to say to my buddy if I completely disagree with what my buddy is trying to do. How can I say it in a nice way? So it really forced them to work together. It forced them to collaborate. It put them in a situation where in order to be successful, they had to communicate respectfully with each other.
And I'll hold it right here so you can put the corner. Put this corner right there.
The second phase of our framework is designed to be relational. So we're relating the skill, the actionable skill for the student directly in a reflection in a debriefing process, and then co-creating a reference point for the whole class to then say, okay, so what does it really look like when I'm persevering through a challenge?
Who hit a bump in the road? Talk with your buddies. Every one of us probably hit a bump, either a big bump or a small bump. Talk about what that bump was and how your team overcame it. The purpose of building a reference point is that students have an ongoing tool to utilize in the classroom in various situations. The tool that we use today has been something we've been developing for the last few months, and every time we come up with a new piece of learning, we add it to that reference point. So the students not only use that today during a science lesson, but we also use it before we go into collaborative work for math. And we also use it before we go into the art room when I know they're gonna struggle working collaboratively for an art project. So this gives students something tangible, something they can refer back to, either because I directed them to do so, or hopefully that they direct themselves to do so authentically. So this is just an ongoing learning tool that we use in the classroom that fits multiple purposes. So Hari, what happened in your team that came from our reference point?
We were trying different things and listening to people.
The third phase is really designed to be an application, an intentional application phase where we are then braiding together the necessary actionable skills into a high-level task that requires that skill to be used to maximize the learning experience. But as our framework really has many opportunities, one of the key opportunities in that last phase is the processing and debriefing of both the content that I learned, but not forgetting about the process by which I went about solving this bigger problem with my peers or by myself.
So what specifically did someone say up there, Tari?
That's a good idea, but can we try?
That's a good idea, but can we try? So you respectfully disagreed with each other. I think a lot of times we do SEL in the classroom, but we never ask kids to go back and think about what it was socially and emotionally that they just engaged in. So we debrief a lot about the content. You know, what did we learn? What was our final product? But unless we're intentional about saying, okay, here's our final product, debriefing the content is very important. Debriefing the academic skill is very important, but also bringing kids into the light of now, let's really talk about what you did socially and emotionally that led you to be successful is important, because a lot of times as teachers, we do great things in SEL, but we don't know we're doing them. And so the kids don't realize that they're engaging in that skill also. So by being very deliberate in debriefing the SEL skill of collaboration or communication, we're putting seeds in our students' minds about, well, what did it feel like? What did it sound like? And the more we talk about that, the more they hold on to that sense of accomplishment when they do it well, but then can also see it in themselves when they're not doing it well with their group.
I think what we've learned is that purposeful reflection questions are really integral to kids' ability to then create transfer between an experience and into then applying it to action within the context of academic content. And so without that reflection question being precise and intentional, kids can't create the transfer that we want them to between the low affective task and the high academic task.
I said in my mind, well, I'll let Dulce talk first.
So you chose to step back and you chose to let Dulce talk. Dulce, I noticed even though Cleo wasn't agreeing with what you said, what did you choose to show on your face?
A little smile.
A little smile, so you didn't roll your eyes. You didn't get angry at Cleo. You chose to have kind expressions on your face, even though Cleo didn't agree with what you had to say. Academic integration of SEL is incredibly crucial. And if we don't allow students to try out these competencies in authentic ways, then they don't master it. My kids were really good at pointing out characters who were being kind to each other or pointing out characters who were persevering, but when it came to them doing it, a lot of them didn't know how to communicate kindly with each other. And I could say be kind to each other, but unless I gave them opportunities to practice it in multiple situations, it never became a skill that they were able to hold on to because all we did was talk about it. We never practiced it. So do we have to work together to make this happen? Mm-hmm. Okay, so how should we do it?
Okay,
Linking SEL and academics actually allows students to move from being dependent learners to independent learners.